You briefly mentioned that I think 2 years ago, there was a change in the criteria, in the evaluation process of all of the categories, if I'm not mistaken, and sustainability is now represents 20% of the evaluation. Can you elaborate a little bit of how was the shift? How has it changed? If you have seen already some type of change in the entries that have folks who have submitted new entries, a little bit of the background also of this shift.
I love that you asked about sustainability. I love talking about it. When I came on, it was very obvious to me that this social and environmental aspect was a very, very important piece of everything for me. I'd mentioned before business school. I went to business school after fashion specifically to get into sustainability and luxury, and unfortunately graduated into the financial collapse of '08 with a whole bunch of school debt. And that was not the conversation that anyone, much less the luxury sector, was having. And I've really been working on the sustainability side behind the scenes, not maybe explicitly, but in each of my roles. And so if I was going to take this role with IF, it meant a lot to me that if we're going to be this authority and partner to the design community, we were going to need to take on sustainability. And fortunately, the CEO, who had come on about a year before me, after the prior CEO had been there for almost 30 years, he also felt very strongly about this, as did the award director who had been there for about 30 years. So this was really exciting collaboration. And we pretty quickly took what were the 5 criteria I mentioned before. The 5th one previously had been impact, and impact was kind of confusing because it was both commercial impact as well as social and environmental. And so we just renamed it sustainability, and we pushed the kind of leading question of commercial impact into differentiation, and then we focused sustainability. And we've built out a working team of outside experts who consult with us, if you will, if you call them that. They consult with me and our team on making sure that the application makes sense from the questions and the criteria and the accreditations we're asking about, and really getting to the biggest impact, which is different, for instance, in cars or audio or packaging or architecture. So really trying to hone in on, by category, what is most important. But also then advising the jurors, in their jurying process, not as jurors, but as expert advisors on the sustainability topic. So we've really invested heavily on this. I'm really proud of the work we're doing. We just, as I mentioned, came out of the final jury, and we had 1 expert per jury chairperson, which really has helped accelerate understanding acceptance. And we look at this as a journey that we're helping our participants become more aware of the topic and asking more, but also our jurors. And yeah, you asked, are we seeing a difference? The answer is the quality of the responses is getting better. We're learning about what we can ask without overwhelming the person filling out the application. And we always said we're rewarding good, not punishing bad. And that's really to try to help, rising tides lift all ships. And that's really our attitude is let's bring people along to make things better. And I think we're seeing that all the time. And we have 4 gold winners this year that were randomly selected by our sustainability experts, as well as best in show just internally on the sustainability topic. And we got our first ever 100 score in sustainability, which was incredible. So, these are really exciting times, and we're just continuing to push and move forward.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah, I'd love to follow up a bit on the sustainability thread, and then also come back to this IF Design Academy, which is how we first connected, Lisa.
Exactly.
So in previous media that you've been on, you've talked about returning to the repairable, the reusable, and updatable in design, and also shifting from short-term to long-term value. And so there's a lot of these different ways of looking at sustainability, as you've mentioned. So how do you see companies and designers doing that?
And I think it's going to intersect nicely, at least, Sean, probably with the talk of the academy.
Yeah.
I think there's a real challenge. I mean, there are a lot of headwinds, as we know, right? Just in terms of accepting sustainability, moving forward. understanding what it is. I think a lot of products are very complex, and therefore it's hard to know the difference. There are a lot of materials that are nebulous. Every market is different in terms of, what we can single stream, recycle in New York City is different than in Providence, Rhode Island, or Los Angeles, right? Mm-hmm. So these are really interesting aspects. One of the partners we've brought into this, what we call the Sustainability Working Group, has been some of the design leads from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And Ellen MacArthur Foundation is one of my favorite organizations I've been involved with for a very long time, who are focused on kind of transitioning to the circular economy. And mm-hmm. all of those words that you just used, repairability, reuse, recycle, et cetera, are parts of the 8-step R ladder, which we ask people about in our application. We don't call it the R ladder. We don't ask about circularity. We ask, right. Is it repairable? Is it recyclable? Is it reusable? Right? Is it refusable? We don't ask that, because then they wouldn't be there. They wouldn't have built it. But that's really, kind of how we're leading, if you will, leading the witness to try to understand and embed. We are seeing this last year, very candidly, that people check a lot of boxes. And then when you actually get into, where they get to write something about it, it's not always justified. And it's not conscious greenwashing. I think that there's a real lack of understanding. And again, someone filling out the application may not have full purview. But if you say that I'm going to use headphones as an example, right, are repairable, you have both designers who understand what that is, because they're experts in audio design of the best quality in the world. And then you have a sustainability expert in this topic, right? And so you're able to look at this headphone and say, well, they say it's repairable, except that none of these pieces seem to come apart. It's molded plastic with foam. And again, we reward good, we don't punish bad. So that doesn't mean that they get knocked down. It just means that they don't get recognized, but their materiality might actually be superior. So it's all a discussion, but it really invokes these conversations that are really meaningful. And so what we're seeing is our jurors get more aware. And because our jurors oftentimes, they can't jury their own projects. That's very clear cut, right? Someone from Samsung steps away if a Samsung is on the table. And there's a very clear process for that. But if they become aware of, oh, wow, we said this, but that's actually not true. Oh, well, there's another way of doing it. That helps everyone, because when the leaders in market and the people who are applying for IFs, they're not all big companies, right? They're like leading design studios. They're young designers starting out and trying to make their mark. The more that they all can feel invested in these answers to these questions, the hope is, of course, that, they become more informed, and then it trickles out into the marketplace, and then it becomes more adopted by consumers. And that's the role we hopefully get to play. Without being too naive about the impact.